episode of the BearDown podcast, Arizona Swimming and Diving Edition. Delaney, Schnell, Wildcat All-American, Pac-12 champion, Olympic silver medalist. Delaney, thanks for joining us today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So obviously that's you have quite the resume, as it were, right off the top. 4-time Pac-12 champion, 5-time All-American, the Olympic silver medalist. And you grew up in Tucson, but you also claim Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in those kind of two different parts of the country.
Yeah, so I was born in Upper Michigan, but and most of my family's from there, but most of my time has been spent in Tucson. I moved here when I was 3, almost 4 years old. So yeah, Tucson's really a big part of my heart, and so is Upper Michigan, just because that's where my roots are from and that's where my family's from. So I think, both have shaped me as a person, and I think as much as Upper Peninsula is my home, I think Tucson is more my home.
Growing up in Tucson, obviously, Arizona Athletics and Arizona Swimming and Diving Program in particular are big parts of the community here. What were you looking at? What were you admiring about the Wildcats growing up in Tucson?
I've grown up training in this facility. I grew up as a gymnast first, and in gymnastics, I would see the Gymcats almost every Friday compete in their season. And when I was little, I remember looking up to all those girls and wanting to be them. And then I switched to diving, and I got to train at the facility where a lot of amazing athletes have come out of. And I got to actually be one of the first ones to dive in the new caster pool. And it was only a year old when I started diving, so that was pretty exciting. It was, the next new big facility. And I grew up seeing the college kids come in and out of the pool, and I always wanted to be like them. And, I grew up around McHale. I grew up around the campus, and I've always admired the Arizona campus. I've admired the facilities. I've always thought it's a beautiful facility. And we've always had outstanding coaches. So it's definitely, yeah. So
you just touched on it. You actually grew up a gymnast.
Yeah.
What were your events? What were you focused on as a young gymnast in Tucson?
Yeah. I would say I was a pretty powerful gymnast. So I really liked the floor. I liked vault. I liked to tumble. Bars and beam were not my favorite, but, I was still okay at those. And I went through the TOPS program in gymnastics. So I went to the Curly Ranch for some camps there, and I was pretty good as a gymnast, but I think I wasn't really cut out for the intensity of it. I think it was just a lot for a 10-year-old to take in, and I didn't really have a life outside of it, and I think I wanted more for myself, so I just kind of burnt out and decided I needed a change.
Looking back now, your career as a gymnast, how did it impact you as a diver? What physically was the mindset? What changed, and what helped you make you a better diver from your gymnastics background?
Yeah, I think gymnastics is very similar to diving because you have to have very good air awareness. Diving is the same thing. You're flipping, and you have to land on not just your feet. You have to land on your head, but vertically. And just like in gymnastics, you land on your feet vertically. I think the one really tricky thing to learn is to land on your head, because in gymnastics you're taught not to do that. And it actually took me about a year to get used to feeling, like that landing on my head is normal. So
just a year it took, huh?
Well, a year I kept doing we call it a back dive, where you kind of go in backwards to your head. And it took me a year to figure out how to not flip over to my feet because I was too scared to land on my head. So I would come out and I'd see the water and I'd be like, oh, no, that's not right, and flip my feet over. So it took me a while to figure that out. But I think just like the flipping aspect and the air awareness, I think that's something that starting at a young age is definitely crucial to be good at a sport like this. And not that you can't be good at it if you start older, but it is a lot harder. So I've been flipping since I was 3 years old. So it's kind of just one of those things that I think has made diving a little more easy to transition into.
So obviously you still follow gymnastics as well, and you got a passion for it as a youngster. Do you have a favorite gymnast that's competing or has competed recently that you still look up to and think they're still the best?
I really liked Shawn Johnson and Nastia Liuk, and I think they were because that was in my childhood, they were the Olympians that I remember watching win the gold medals. And I actually had met Shawn Johnson at the training camp I went to at the Crowley Ranch. She was there getting a floor routine choreographed. So I remember we're all like sitting outside this room watching her floor routine be choreographed, and it was really, really cool. So I think it's just like having that personal experience like helped me look up to them a little more.
Yeah. The question I had for you is, do you see any differences, or how is it different for you when you're diving indoor versus outdoor? Is there a difference? Is there some subtleties to it?
Yeah, we just had Pac-12s here, and you know, diving outdoors is one thing, but competing outdoors is another. It's really hard to compete outdoors because you have, you know, the chlorine, you have the sun, you have the dry wind, the weather, you have the rain. Like the wind, I think, in my opinion, is the hardest thing to handle because it's really hard when you're airborne and the wind is pushing you back and forth. So it's really tricky, and I think it adds an extra element. But I think when you're going from outdoors to indoors, it makes things so much easier. I think, you know, you have so much elements you train under, and then when you go indoors, you don't have to worry about any of that. So I think it does add a little bit of an advantage for outdoor divers.
And your career has been seen a lot of success indoor and outdoor. I want to start with the kind of the first chapter of your Wildcat career, pre-Olympics, pre-Team USA qualifying. You know, your journey starting with just becoming a college diver.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of always knew, like, my family didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I kind of always knew, like, I needed sports to kind of, like, help me get through college, and I kind of, like, relied on my athletic ability to, you know, like, potentially get a scholarship, and I think that was really the end goal for my career. Obviously, like, there was bigger goals, but I think in the end, the thing that I wanted most was to come to college and be able to play a sport in college and hopefully get some of my college paid for. And so to have that, like, that was very incredible. I think I'm really grateful for it because I know that without diving, like, I probably wouldn't have made it through college. So it's really given me a lot more than just, you know, Olympic medals, and it's given me, you know, an education. Mm-hmm. It's given me a degree.
And right away, there were some Pac-12 championships. You were an All-American, and then you made the incredibly difficult journey to get to the Olympics. I want to talk about all that went into that because it's really hard to make the Olympics and make Team USA, but what you went through with the COVID and the cancellations, I think made it even more impossible if that's possible.
Yeah.
What did you take away from that year off you took to train, from college competition to COVID cancellations to that whole journey to get you to Team USA qualifying?
Yeah, I mean, when you're forced to be out of the pool, it's kind of like injury, you know, like when you're forced to be out of the pool, it's really difficult, and it kind of is like an eye opener of like how much you really appreciate what you're doing and how much every day counts. And so when we were forced to be out of the pool for months at a time, that was really difficult. I mean, at first it was kind of like, whoa, like what is happening? It wasn't as concerning at first, but when it went on to like 2 months, 3 months, that's when it was like, wow, like this is very serious. And that's where like the doubt starts coming in of like, how am I going to prepare for the Olympics, you know, that are still happening in a year. And not just that, like adding an extra year was tough just because you typically, when you go into an Olympic year, you're prepping for that. Whereas like in college, I took a redshirt year. I didn't compete collegiately that year. I only took a couple classes. So I was making sure my whole focus was on this Olympics. And so for that to get postponed was really tough, just like mentally, physically, emotionally. And then you add the extra year and your body is going through so much for 4 years, and then you're adding another year. And, you know, I had many, many injuries come up just within that extra year because I didn't have time to let my body recover. Yeah, I mean, it was tough. And I think right now you're hearing a lot more about like mental health with athletes after the Olympics. And I think that's partly because of that 5th year. I think the Tokyo athletes have been through a lot. And I think that added a lot more awareness to, you know, post-Olympics is tough. Like it's really hard to come off of that high and come down and go back to normal life. It's really challenging. It's not really something that's like considered, and it's not something I was prepared for.
So when you get to, I would say maybe the first of many surreal moments for you of your journey to Tokyo. The first being qualifying and knowing that you're going to represent the United States at the Olympics. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I go back in my phone and I look at those memories just because I'm like, I want it to be fresh in my mind because like, it's just great. Like I wish I could relive that moment a million times. Just like the moment me and Jessica found out we made the Olympic team for synchro. Like, just like, I remember we knew we really just kind of needed to do our last dive for, like fours. We just needed to do the last dive and land on our heads. And I remember like trying to see the scoreboard, but we couldn't see it because the thing was in the way, like the big TV thing was in the way. And so we couldn't see anything. And we're just kind of like, oh my God, did we do it? We did it. And just like hearing everybody like kind of standing and clapping and just like that moment was just so unreal. Like I wish everybody could experience something like that. Like it was unreal. And then like, it kind of took a lot of pressure off of the individual event because then I got to go in and just say, you know what, I made the Olympic team. Now I can just enjoy it. And I had one of the best meets of my life in that final and made the Olympic team again and individual. So.
And then the immediate encore to that unreal moment you just described was going to Tokyo and being there.
Oh yeah.
What was the takeaway from that? What was I'm sure more reels of moments on your phone from that experience of actually being in Tokyo at the Olympics?
I think I really wish I could have gotten more pictures. I mean, I have a lot, but I was just like, there was so much going on around you. It was really hard to like capture everything in the way you wanted to. So I have lots of pictures, but like, I wish that there was like more that I could have captured. It's just, it's impossible to do, but, yeah, even my synchro partner, she's been in Olympics already. She went to 2016. And she was even telling me, like, with COVID, it still pretty much has been the exact same. So it was really, like, kind of a relief to hear. Like, I was still getting that experience minus the spectators. I was still getting to, like, experience what an Olympics would be like. And, like, I think getting there was quite a journey. We were sitting in the airport for 8 hours because of the COVID processing and stuff. So that obviously was a challenge in itself. So we didn't really get to the village till like 1 a.m. And so like for me to get there wasn't quite what I had expected. I think the eye opener moment was, the next morning when we got to open all our gear and see all the suitcases in our rooms and stuff with our names on it. And I actually had letters from home and stuff.
Wow.
So I was able to read the letters from my family from home. And I think the moment I really felt like I was at the Olympics was the opening ceremony. I think most Olympians would tell you the same thing, that it was walking out into that arena and seeing, like, unfortunately not seeing the spectators in this case, but like seeing that huge arena. And all these athletes coming through there, I think was like that moment where it's like, wow, like I finally made my biggest dream a reality.
You made your dream a reality. Life changed for you a little bit. You became a celebrity. You're an icon here at the University of Arizona. You went on the Today Show after you won. How surreal was that for you?
That was cool. I remember we had some team meetings before the event started, and some previous Olympians that were there had won silver medals. And so he was telling us, like, if you win a medal at the Olympics, you get to go on all these Today shows, you get to go on all these talk shows. And I remember like, oh, that's cool. But like, I wasn't really expecting to win a medal. So I was like, oh, very cool. Like, yeah. And then when we won the medal, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I remember he said we get to do all this stuff. And I remember like, me and Jessica being carted around in vans and escorted everywhere to all these like media buildings. And the first one we went to was the Today Show. And just like, I have a video actually, it's funny, like just us behind the scenes, like getting food and we'd start eating and they'd be like, okay, we gotta go. So be like, okay. And then we'll go do the interview and then we'll walk to another one and we're trying to get some food in. Like, oh, okay, we gotta go. So like, it was like really hard to get food in, but we were getting interviews till like 2 a.m. I mean, it was a very, very cool experience.
I think another example of how life changed for you after that incredible run in Tokyo, and maybe how it came full circle being a young girl who grew up in Tucson and being around the U of A, is seeing your own street banner outside of McHale on the street and you
Yeah.
do that. How does that impact your thoughts, or how do you reflect back on that coming full circle?
I don't really know. I think because I had one last year as well, and I think so like I was more excited about it last year, I guess, just because it was like very new. But I remember like again when I was little, seeing all those signs, and I would always like I actually didn't even know that they were athletes at U of A. I just like thought they were like really cool pictures of like representing their sport.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that it was like actually the athletes of the school, and so it was really cool, like really special to be able to see like I got to be a part of that.
And your excellence diving, Delaney, has continued just last week. Some more Pac-12 championships for you. Looking back now, we're ahead of the NCAAs. Do you have a favorite memory or something from your Wildcat career outside of the incredible Tokyo experience that you still look back and fondly on here?
I mean, I've always really liked Pac-12s. I think it's one of the most fun competitions we have, just because it's the only meet where you're with your entire team, because they split up men's and women's in diving. And swimming and diving. So it's really cool to be able to like experience a really big championship meet with your whole dive team. Just because like we're all really close and we all train, lots and lots of hours together. So I think just like in general, like competing with my team and traveling with my team is probably one of my most favorite things that I get to do.
And you talked about this when you came back from Tokyo about the importance to you to leave a legacy as a member of the swimming diving program in Arizona, but also as a student.
Right.
How do you feel about that legacy that you've left so far?
Yeah, I think it's really important that like student athletes remember like we're students first, and that's why it's student athlete, not athlete student, just because we're here to get an education, but our sport is kind of like helping us do that. It's kind of, I see it as like almost just still like an extracurricular activity, but at the same time, like it's allowing us to leave a legacy not only in the sport but also as a student. And I think it's really like reminded me that being an athlete has shaped me to be a better student. It's taught me so many skills that I don't think I would have if I weren't an athlete. But also it's given me my education. Like I said before, it's like without diving, I probably wouldn't have gone to college. I probably would have done something else with my life, or maybe have gone to community college, or I would have had to go about my career differently. So yeah, I think being an athlete has really shaped how I am as a student.
You've accomplished so much as a diver, internationally, and as a collegiate student athlete. What do you still see left to accomplish in your career?
I mean, I've been trying to get a national title for 3 years now. Unfortunately, last year I missed out by one place, which was devastating, but I think at the same time it set me up for Tokyo better than I could have imagined. I think it was what I needed to kind of give me that extra push, especially with that extra year. So I think the one thing I'm really looking forward to is hopefully getting a national title.
That would be the only box left to check in this illustrious career.
Yeah.
But here we are, 2022, 50th anniversary of Title IX. I'm curious to know your thoughts on celebrating this monumental moment for women's sports and how it's impacted not only yourself, as what we just talked about, but also generations of young girls who have been able to fulfill their dream of going to college and becoming a student athlete as well.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a lot more opportunity for women to do sports in college. I mean, nowadays, like, they have to make sure there's equal number of men and women scholarships, and I think that's great because I don't think enough women are in sports. I think sometimes there can be an intimidation to it. I don't know. But I think, no, it's incredible. I mean, just being a woman in sport, like, it's really cool to be able to, like, get messages from kids on Instagram saying, like, they look up to me. And I think that's one of the most amazing things that's come out of my career, is that I get to inspire other women to pursue sport and to be able to come to college and get an education and represent a college, a university as an athlete as well.
Absolutely. Now we're going to take a look a little bit about life after diving for you, Delaney. You're studying speech and language pathology here at University of Arizona. What drew you to that, and what are your plans for life after diving with that study?
Yeah, so I'm getting my master's right now in SLP. And it wasn't my original plan. I actually came into college thinking I was going to do occupational therapy. But COVID kind of added that extra year for me. They came back and said, we're going to give the extra athletic eligibility year back. So I kind of wanted to take advantage of that, but also I realized that gives me more opportunity to continue my education. And so I started looking into programs at U of A because I was like, if I want to be here longer, I'm going to see if there's something else I could pursue because OT does not have a program here. So I started looking around and I saw speech and I was like, I wonder why I've never looked into this before because my mom was a special ed teacher. And so I grew up watching OTs and speech pathologists coming through my schools when I was young. And I even remember my mom saying like how she loves speech and she wished she had done speech. And I'm just like, why did I not look at this before? So I started looking into the program and I saw, they're top 6 in the country. And I saw that they got to do some pretty amazing things with kids and even adults. And so we actually work with a kid in Team Impact who has a little bit of speech difficulty. And so like kind of getting that one-on-one experience and like watching him struggle to like communicate was like kind of like a aha moment for me where it's like, I think this is what I really want to do. And so I applied and I got in. I think it was honestly fate. But I think after being in the program for as short amount of time I have been in it, I've kind of found that I think I like working with adults. So I might consider working with adults. Kids are tough. They're really hard to work with just because you have to kind of give them more attention than you do adults. So I don't know. I think I want to work with adults, but we'll see. I guess I'm still kind of exploring that.
Well, it's still exploring. The journey not yet complete for Delaney. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the BearDown podcast. Delaney Schnell, Wildcat through and through, Wildcat for life, BearDown.